Good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 56th Yale Career Panel, A Candid View of the Legal Profession. My name is Trish Takemoto, and I'll be moderator for this session. This is actually the 71st event in the series of events covering different professions and career issues. Aside from the panels, we have had fireside chats, career advisory events, and networking and career conversations. The panels themselves were organized 14 years ago by a group of Yale alumni volunteers, and the concept was to provide candid and unvarnished views of various professions. And for this panel, we are privileged to have three lawyers who represent three different career paths. First, we welcome Peggy, who is a magistrate judge in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of New York. We have Yoon-jee Kim, who is a corporate counsel in the international law firm of Melvin and Myers. And then last but not least, we have Osamu Watanabe, who is the general counsel for the global investment banking firm of Moelis and Company. Let's see, and just a bit of housekeeping. This panel is recorded and it will be on our website, yalecareerpanels.com. And the website also has our previous panels that we've recorded, which includes other careers such as investment banking, consulting, entrepreneurship, social media and influencers, and nonprofits, to name a few. The panel will run for about an hour, so we'll have like 45 minutes for the panel, and the last 15 minutes we'll use for questions. So if you have questions, you should type them in on the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And I think that's all the housekeeping. Okay, welcome to everyone. Thank you for volunteering, first of all, to be on the panel. We really appreciate it. And to get to the first question, I'd like to ask each of you if you can briefly tell us how you came to be a lawyer. I know a lot of us carry the weight of parental expectations, but was it that, or was it a person in your life or an event that happened which you can point to that said, oh, that's something I would like to do? So Osamu, do you want to start off?
Yeah, it's been a long time, so hard to remember. But I was an undergrad and I was studying history, politics. I was very interested in social policy, and I thought that going to law school would be a great way to get into government and social policy, policy making. Turns out I wound up in business and finance, but at the time, going to Yale Law School was a real opportunity to do a number of things in the world of policy, or beyond it, as it turns out.
Mm-hmm. Yoon-jee?
Sure. So similar to Osamu, I think when I was younger and was asked what I wanted to be, I grew up watching Full House. So I'm going to date myself a little bit. Grew up watching Full House, the first version. And one of my favorite things was the concept of fairness. I think the middle child was like, that's not fair. And so the 12-year-old Yoon-jee, when told to write an essay or a letter to herself about what she wants to do when she grows up, was like, I think I want to be a judge. And we do have a judge here on the panel, and I'm not. But I always thought that, if I was a judge, I could tell people, what's going to be fair. And that appealed to my 12-year-old sense. And then going to school in Honolulu, I wanted to get into policy like Osamu. And I figured, or, maybe write nonfiction, fiction, young adult books one day. But I think.
Oops.
Yoon-jee, we lost you. Oh. Okay, well, I think
but
there. Yoon-jee,
that was the
are you
path
back?
to becoming a lawyer.
Yoon-jee, are you back?
Oh, did I lose you guys? Uh-oh.
We can hear you, but we can't. You're frozen in time. Okay. Okay. Yoon-jee, how about if we come back to you? And Peggy, would you like to
Yes, I can hear you. I'm sorry. Did I lose you?
oh, we lost Yoon-jee?
Oh,
Oh, okay, she's rebooting. Okay. Peggy, would you like to start?
sure. Thank you, Trish. It's a pleasure to be here again. So when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, I was very aware of all the social movements, the civil rights movement, the women's liberation movement, the ecology movement, a lot of the things that we're still seeing today. But I was really inspired by a lot of the teachers that I had in the public schools, who made it clear that we could make a difference in the world. And we learned about people like Shirley Chisholm, who ran for president, even though she really had no chance of winning. And Abraham Lincoln was a lawyer. And so there were all these role models who were lawyers. And I thought, wow, wouldn't that be great if I could do something important and make a difference in the world? And being a lawyer seemed like a path to that. So that's how I got started.
And do you think like where do you think now the profession is heading these days? I mean, is it heading in a good direction, a bad direction? Are a lot of people still have your uh or want to be corporate lawyers, have you seen, or would they like to have more social conscience and perhaps work for a nonprofit? I mean, how have you, what have you encountered in your professional lives?
I think people are still inspired to make a difference. Whether they end up doing that for various reasons is a little more varied. I think that there are people who want the job for stability reasons. They want to make some money. There's nothing wrong with that. There are people who want to do various things, or they want the law degree so that they can move on and be in other positions where having a legal background would be useful. When I got to law school, that was the first time that I realized, I mean, I thought lawyers, my parents actually had this idea of lawyers as being a small business. You had a solo practice, and then you could have a office downstairs, and you can live upstairs and raise a family and help people with their wills and real estate closings and things like that. And it wasn't until I got to law school that I learned about these big firms where you could represent large corporations and make a lot of money. It really had never crossed my mind that you could make money. And so I think some people, when they get to that point, think making that money is really good and important. And you can then have, access to big cases, important cases, and clients who are doing a lot of important things. So again, there's nothing wrong with it, but I think that there's a point when people are exposed to these different paths, and then they have to make a decision about what they want to do. And it's not a permanent decision. You can move back and forth. We can talk about how you do that. But I do think that there are people who start out one way and have an idea of what it means to be a lawyer, and then they are confronted with other opportunities, let's say, and then they make other choices.
Well, and as we all know, law school is very expensive. In fact, all schooling is very expensive. So you may have loans that you have to pay off and would like to get that out of the way. So you could pursue a more lucrative job before you get to doing something else. Oh, Yoon-jee, you're back.
Yes. Sorry, I don't know what happened. It just everything cut out for a second.
Okay.
So I'm not sure where it was when I cut out.
You're well, you were talking about how you became a lawyer. Did you decide because you wanted to you were socially encouraged to by your parents, for instance?
Oh no. Oh, so actually no, my parents were very open-minded about what I did as long as I could support whatever I wanted to do. Um, but it was from watching Full House as a child and thinking about fairness and policy as well, going to school in Honolulu and public policy. And I figured no matter what, I needed a JD if I was going to pursue my dream.
And the question we're talking about now is, where the profession is heading now, and if there's still, social policy things that are driving people or other other issues. And so Peggy has said that, you know, she go to law school and you discover all these other different kinds of law. So Osamu, what do you say about where the profession is heading?
So I would sort of identify 2 or 3 mega trends in the legal profession, which tie into what's going on in the world. And the first one is, in my career, the growth of law, the legalization of society, starting with business and now in other areas of social interaction, has been tremendous. I mean, there's lawyers everywhere, and everything is legal. Like, you used to be able to run a business without having a lawyer. Now you really can't. A business of any real meaningful size. Every major corporation has a huge legal department. That wasn't the case in the 1980s. So that's one thing. And I think there's statistics on the number of pages in the Federal Registry of Regulations that just, shows it's just going astronomically up. So that's one trend, which is good for lawyers. I'm not sure it's great for society. The second trend is that law is historically has been a very backward-looking profession. There's a basic bedrock principle of law called stare decisis, which is that, if it's decided, it stands unless it really needs to change, and things change slowly. And we've seen that change dramatically just in the first 9 months of this administration, but it's been going on now for probably a half a generation now. And that's because of in my view, the rapid acceleration of technological advancement has changed everything in society. And law is just a governor of society. And so law has to adjust much more rapidly today than it did when people were farming and had farming disputes about who gets the water down the river. And so as a lawyer, one of the skills that you're going to need to have that you didn't have to have in my generation is foresight. Decisions you make that I make today about what we do is not based on what the law was 10 years ago. It's based on what the law will be in 3 years or 5 years. And that's much harder. And a plug for our alma mater, Yale Law School is the single best and maybe only law school that is set up to help teach you the social policy and political reasons why law is the way it is, and therefore give you an opportunity to better predict where it will be in 5 years.
And Yoon-jee, how do you see it at O'Malveny as a big corporate law firm?
So I think, as the most junior member of the panel here, I don't have the longevity of career to say, like, to see all of the changes, but I definitely agree with Osamu that I think being a lawyer helps you kind of grapple with the changes in society and technology. And as Osamu was talking about, I think the legal training gives you I think, context and the ability to think about how to handle these changes, and how, as a society, we should use the changes and advancements to make society better. And so, while there is a lot of looking back, I think there's a lot of opportunity going forward to kind of help each other and help kind of pave a better future, despite everything going on today.
And can I just add also, when I was in law school, I remember sometimes being asked, what do you think the law should be? And I remember and I did not go to Yale Law School, I went to the other law school. And I remember thinking, well, why don't you teach me you're here, like, I'm in law school, I want to learn what the law is. But we were constantly asked that question, and we had to think about it. And even though it wasn't what the law was, it got us to be a little bit more creative about justice and fairness and things like that. And when I went overseas to the War Crimes Tribunal in The Hague, we actually had to come up with a new system and come up with a new system of procedures using law from different countries, work with international law in areas that we didn't have precedent. And so that training of what do I think the law should be really came in handy. And I think, that was a unique circumstance, but I think Osamu's right that in different parts of the law, being able to kind of see where things are going and where things need to go to adjust to the developments in society is really useful. So I would encourage people who are thinking about becoming lawyers when they go to law school to really focus on the world's going to look different. I graduated law school 37 years ago, and the world is really different now. And so a lot of changes have happened. I'm not saying I predicted them, but I think not just focusing on what the law is now is too narrow. You really do have to think about what the world will look like, 50 years from now.
And maybe we could address a little bit the elephant in the room, which is AI, which we've all heard, very different stories about the use of AI, and the use. AI is not exactly the right thing to use when you're trying to put a brief in court, apparently, unless you check it over very well, because it apparently makes up citations which do not exist. But do you think AI will take over some parts of what a lawyer does, or some parts of the profession, say? Any thoughts on AI?
Sure. I think at least from a law firm perspective, we think about this all the time and creating efficiencies. And I think one of the common headlines is, is AI going to take the jobs of lawyers and reduce the number of lawyers for junior lawyers coming out of law school? And I think from a practical perspective, I don't think so, because at the end of the day, AI is a tool, and there is machine learning, but it still takes people to kind of wait, to go through that data that comes out, or the product that comes out, as you mentioned, Trish, these false citations, etc. So I think the way I think computers and word processing and personal computers might have taken away certain types of jobs, where I think I started in the legal profession, where we had one executive assistant per attorney in a law firm setting, or one assistant for 3 attorneys. I think now we have 10 attorneys sharing one executive assistant. And so, because I think the partners that I worked with when I first started, they all didn't type their own memos or letters or briefs or contracts, and now we all do it ourselves, right? And so certain types of menial tasks like that go away, and I think AI will certainly kind of speed up the certain processes, but I don't think there's a replacement for critical thinking and judgment.
But I think
Yeah.
if we do it right, AI is actually very exciting, because it will do a lot of things very quickly. The skills that we need are going to be different. And so there's going to be a high volume of things, and people are going to need judgment, the skills of judgment and discernment and critical thinking to sort through all that stuff. So the hallucinations that you were talking about, Trish, there are now tools that will enable you to do searches only within the realm of actual cases. So the hallucinations, there are services that promise that this won't happen. And so that is possible, but it's still, people are still going to have to go through those cases and make sure that they're saying the things that you need for it to do. But the areas in which it's exciting is, AI can compile chronologies really fast, and they can pick out the cases that are relevant to the thing you're looking for really fast. And they can write very formed things very fast and clearly. So I think it's just a question of people adjusting to those skills. I mean, a lot of things, as Yoon-jee mentioned, a lot of jobs have disappeared. Like I spent a summer in college working in a law firm doing pocket parts, where you had to update things and put in the new piece of paper, and nobody does that anymore because everything's electronic. But there are other things. So I think of AI as like a overeager, very competent and thorough intern, right? And so I would never let the intern make the decisions, but the intern can help me find things and compile it and organize it and do that kind of work that I don't have time to do. So I think that's useful. But they're not as fun as interns. I like having human beings. And I like teaching and students, and so that part won't disappear. Interns, don't worry. But I do think that it is, if we're thoughtful about how we use it and we're careful and we know the limitations, I think it can be really exciting.
Yeah,
Osamu?
I think that's right. If you look at, and I'll just talk about big law firms because there's a whole profession beyond big law firms, but big law firms do dominate some of our profession, like the one O'Melveny Myers. And so, if you look at that as a modern day factory, part of it is information processing factory, and that part will be like an assembly line factory. It'll be automated. There'll be, like, if you go to a car factory now, there are a lot of machines and not a lot of people. But the other part of the factory, which involves judgment, decision making, ethics, will be all human. I mean all human. And so I don't know what the ratio there is, but I think there's a future for quite a number of lawyers. The other thing I would say that AI is going to do is, at least at big law firms, is the model has been in my entire career, and I think as long as anyone can remember, has been an hourly model. So you get paid by the hour, which is a crazy model for lots of reasons. But it is the model, and it's incredibly lucrative. I think what AI does is it really focuses people on productivity and not on hours, because AI's justification is that it's more productive. I mean, the machine can work faster and forever, like, doesn't sleep at all and just keeps working. And so you can't.
It doesn't need coffee breaks.
Exactly. So it's not a model based on human hours and longevity. It's based on productivity, and I think that will push law firms, the big law firms, to really pressure them to change their model to something that's more based on actually what you produce and not how long it takes you to do it. Because you shouldn't be, in an AI economy, you shouldn't be rewarded for taking 10 hours to do something that takes 1 hour. So
right. It's very interesting. That's a very interesting viewpoint. Very true, I think. And then, well, can you tell me, let's see, what are the myths versus the realities in the legal profession? I mean, we've all seen the many iterations of Law and Order, for instance, and things seem to get solved. Not only seem to get solved, and the trial lawyers win most of the time, right? And get a favorable outcome. Are there, in your particular areas, what are the myths and what are the realities of being a lawyer?
I think that's the main myth. It never ceases to amaze me. I'll talk to young people, and I'll say, I want to become a lawyer, and I'm like, why? I love to argue and I love to win, and I'm like, okay, well, you really shouldn't be a lawyer. There's very little winning. At least I don't know about you guys, Peggy and Yoon-jee, but I never win. I compromise a lot, which I guess is a form of losing more than winning. And so if you like compromising, if you're very malleable in the outcome, yeah, that's a daily occurrence. But winning, I don't know. Not for me, at least. Maybe I'm a bad lawyer.
Osamu, thankfully, I'm in corporate law and I'm in capital markets, and so when I get to help my clients do an IPO or do a bond or securities offering, I call it a win. So I have stayed away from the arguing part. I realized shortly into my career that I did not like the argument part of being a lawyer. So happy I found my little niche. But I'm with you. I think the myth versus the reality. I think there's a lot of TV on criminal law, and I think I can't speak for Judge Kuo, but I don't deal with criminal law on a day-to-day other than speed limits and traffic violations. But a lot of TV is on criminal law. So I think that's a myth. And I think when Suits was on, people thought New York lawyering and big law was glamorous. And I have to say that's quite the myth. You can't be arguing a litigation trial and then like signing a deal like Harvey. Most people kind of do one or the other. Although Osamu, you're general counsel, so maybe you do a little of everything.
It's not glamorous, whatever it is I'm doing. It's a lot of unglamorous stuff. So
I think the biggest myths like glamour
but at least
and
for
drama.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
drama. You don't get witnesses to confess on the stand. You know, that it doesn't happen. But and most of our time is sitting behind a desk, writing things, reading things. Even as a judge, I'm in court not as often as you would think. In state court, I think that the judges are probably in court more often. But a lot of my work is writing and reading briefs and making decisions on the papers and those kinds of things. But we do have trials. Not as many as people expect. I think the statistic is something like 97% of civil cases settle. So very, very few cases go to trial on the civil side because most cases will settle. We consider every settlement a win because people are avoiding trial and they get something rather than nothing. But we do have a lot of criminal cases still. And in those cases, the cases that go to trial, there's a winner and there's a loser. And so, the jury makes a verdict, comes back with a verdict, they make a decision. And so, and because of the risk, we're always telling people it's better to settle. And so that's what happens. But it can still be very exciting. I ended up starting my career in criminal law because of the drama and the thrill. I spent my first summer after my first year of law school at the Legal Aid Society doing public defender work. And, people were very cynical. They're like, oh, it's so boring being a lawyer. It's not like TV. But I was in the courtroom with one of the lawyers in a trial. He let me sit at counsel table, and it was so exciting. It was so fun and so unpredictable. And the jurors said the weirdest things, and the witnesses didn't testify the way you'd think they would. And so that was really appealing to me. It's not every day, but it still happens. And I think, once you get a taste of that, people tend to get hooked, and then that's what they want. So it is fun, and it is possible to find those kinds of niches. I encourage students to spend their law school years experimenting and figuring out what they want. If you don't want to be in court, being a corporate lawyer is perfect. If you like doing deals, that's great. Some people love tax law, some people love bankruptcy, some people like the criminal law, so there's just a lot of different things you can find within the law if you look for it.
And it sort of leads to the next question, Peggy. You mentioned, you spend a lot of time sitting behind your desk, reading and writing. So, like, what are the characteristics do you think would make a successful lawyer, and what's required to be that star lawyer?
I think a willingness to just dig in and work is one thing. But I actually think I've come to think that curiosity is a big part of it. You have to keep like asking yourself, what? Why? What are they saying? Why are they saying that? And then it leads you to go find the answer, whether it's something that's factual that you're investigating or it's some legal issue that you dig and read some more, because sometimes I'll read a brief and I'll think, why are the parties fighting about that? That just seems like it's so minor. And then when I read more about it, it's like, oh, okay, it affects this bigger issue and that's why they care. But if you just say, oh, well, it's this and then it's that, and you stop, then you never get to the heart of the matter. And I think being curious is really important.
Osamu is a in-house counsel.
Yeah, I was just listening to you about the trials. I'm wondering if we can work out a 1-week job swap, because I'd love to have the drama of the jury coming back. So that sounds
you don't want drama in your job, right? That's
no,
your job,
exactly.
to drama out.
Exactly, because I'm the person who's getting sentenced. So I'd rather have it more simple. So I think some of the characteristics of the successful lawyers I've worked with are that they like to master an area. So like same things with like PhDs, people who are, I mean, I guess JD is a a doctorate degree, people who really want to master an area, and to be very good and be proud of being very good in a complicated area. Like Yoon-jee, I assume, Cap Mark is a very complicated area and you're a top practitioner, and that's makes you feel good. Well, not everybody enjoys that, or the way you would. And that requires, as you said, Peggy, I think being detail oriented. You can't master an area sort of skimming over the bullet points. I work in an investment bank where I think people do more bullet point skimming than mastery. And then there are different areas of law, so that's sort of kind of the area I'm in. But also, I think people who really believe in something can be very effective and very happy if they're working in the area they really believe in. And so that's important. And then lastly, I think Peggy also touched on this earlier. If you like to teach, because I think it still is very much an apprenticeship business. And so you get to teach younger lawyers until they get replaced by AI programs, in which case maybe it won't be as much fun. But at least for now, it is the case that it's an apprenticeship business, and you get to master the area and then take on an apprentice or two.
I think it helps to like people. I think it helps to like being with people. It's possible to be in a legal job where you're just with the books. But I think being able to explain things, to ask questions, to interact with people, to help people, those are all things. Having a client who's having a problem that you can advise, those are all very fulfilling things.
Yoon-jee, you have?
Definitely agree. Curiosity, I think the curiosity, like kind of wanting to master things, and also go, hand in hand with that, I think is enjoying, I think, critical thinking, like kind of putting all the pieces together, solving a puzzle, whether it's a criminal case puzzle or, trying to figure out why someone's fighting over something, or a puzzle and trying to make. So definitely agree with everything Peggy and Osamu were talking about.
Well, and the flip side, what would you say is someone who will not do well at being a lawyer? I mean, if obviously if they like the outdoors, they definitely should not be a lawyer. They should be a park ranger. But are there some other sort of signs that it would be like sort of a bad profession for you to go into?
The outdoor thing is definitely the first thing that came to mind, because we're just limited. We need to read things. We need to, whether it's the rules or the briefs or doc contracts, like there's just a lot of reading involved. So if you don't like reading and details and are a big picture inventor of things, or hands-on, you might find the law boring. But if you like words and rules and logic games, like I think it's fun, and it's such a it's a profession with so many different aspects. I think, as Judge Kuo already talked about, like you could find something for most people.
If you're in practice, either private or in-house, it still is, lawyers are a service profession. So if you like having power, like real, like I don't have to explain myself. Well, I guess Peggy has it. This is my
Oh no.
but you
I have much less power than you think.
Yeah. But if you don't like being a service provider, and some people don't, then you should become a police officer or something. And I guess the other thing is, you get blamed a lot for things, and part of your function is to be an intermediary and to have the two principals blame their lawyers. And so, you're not always the most popular person. So if you mind people not liking you, either temporarily or on a longer basis, you might not be so good in certain aspects of the law.
Yeah, I think if you're somebody who doesn't like rules, that would be hard too, or somebody who prides herself on just being like super creative and doesn't, just everything's different and not following the rules and not bothering about what other people have said, or trying to conform to the parameters of what the legal structure is. I think it'll be very frustrating. And certainly the power thing. Even as a judge, I have very little power. Everything I do, I have to explain, and I have to be able to justify, and I can be appealed, I can be overruled, I can have, all kinds of different things. I'm constantly, in at risk of making mistakes. And so, I have to, and I can't, it's not like on TV, I just bang the gavel and so be it. I have to always make sure that I'm getting it right. And I try to get it right, but that means I'm reading a lot and I'm looking at what other people have done, and kind of picking the brains of other judges through their decisions to see what the right outcome is. So there's a lot of that. If you just want to be you, I think that's hard.
And well, none of you are close to retirement age or the next phase of your lives after you. Have you seen what happens after if you've had your legal career? What have colleagues perhaps done? Have they semi-retired and still stayed in the law, or have they gone to do completely different things? I mean, what can you do if you, after a while, you decide you do not want to, for instance, be in the trial court, or if you don't want to be in counsel, in-house counsel?
I have many peers who've retired. Some people have retired from the bench and they're doing mediation, so there's something that's law related. But I have a friend who's an actor, right, who was always interested in theater and did community theater, retired and has had some off-Broadway roles and has moved on to TV and done other things. Another one was a very talented cartoonist, political cartoonist, and does that on the side, and so has a legal job that has flexibility, so he has time to devote to that. People have music interests, and so there's lots you can do if you're leaving the law. Within the law, you can still make a difference. A lot of retired judges and lawyers do volunteer work, and so that is very fulfilling as well.
I was going to say, at least for trial lawyers, I think acting would be a good profession to go into, right? Because if you're a criminal lawyer, presenting cases to the jury, you have to have a certain flair, right? I think, in order to advance your case. So I think acting would be an excellent job.
Actually, I've heard it's the opposite.
Oh, no, really?
This particular friend was not a trial lawyer, was not.
Oh, really?
And is a very subtle actor and is in demand for that very trait, not the, in court kind of thing.
I actually have a friend who does modeling. I don't know that he actually ever practiced. He became a lawyer, got his legal degree, maybe practiced for half a year. Maybe, and has made a living being a model and being in TV. Move on to write novels as well. So, I think on Netflix, the partner track that Helen Wan was a New York City based lawyer and wrote a novel, and I think now she just writes and sold her book to TV.
Yeah, I think about my my classmates, and so few of them actually still practice law, and many of them never even tried or wanted to. Some of my, like one of my closest friends is the CEO of a not-for-profit. Other classmates of mine, quite a number of them became deans of law schools, as well as professors. A fair number went into government to take roles in various administrations. A lot of people started their own business because if you're a good lawyer in, say, a media company, you learn a lot about the media business. You can. One lawyer I knew, I worked with pretty closely. He became a boxing promoter. He's one of the most successful boxing promoters in America. So I think there's lots of things you can do. There's a discipline to how lawyers are trained to think that I think is useful in a lot of things. So I myself, I think I'll try to become an influencer, something like that. It's like something fun,
TikTok channel,
something like that. Yeah.
something like that.
And if you
We look
really like school, some a fellow Yale alumni friend went back and went after serving JAG and went to the med school. So he's now wrapping up his residency.
So
So you can
Trish, I would also add to the question about who is an unhappy lawyer are the ones who feel trapped and aren't doing anything about it. So I know a lot of people who feel like they have to stay in that position and they can't do anything more. But I think there are just a lot of avenues that are available if you get up and pursue them. You might not be acting alongside Meryl Streep, but you can find things to do in that area, or maybe you will. I don't know. But I think I do know lots of lawyers who are unhappy in their jobs and they just keep going, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
That's very unfortunate. I guess you should go in with a plan, right? A goal. For instance, if you have law school debt and you want to pay it off, then you could spend, 5 years at a big corporate firm and then sort of transition out to do what you really want to do. But
Yeah.
but
you don't need a plan. I mean, I think having the financial stability is a big part of it, but I also think opportunities come up, and I think it's hard to predict what will come up, and so I think it's good to have a plan, but it's also good to be just open to whatever happens to come up.
and be ready to take that opportunity when
Exactly.
when it does come up.
Yeah. I briefly did commentary for Fox News, and so the opportunity came up, and I was like, okay, I'll. It was very interesting many years ago, but lawyers are in demand for that kind of thing.
Well, we look forward. We'd like to see you again on the news if possible. Okay, well, let's see if we have, I think, some questions here. If I can read this with my glasses. Okay, the first one, I'm considering this route to practice law. I guess they're in biology. They want to be a patent lawyer. But current PhD holders are telling me it isn't a good market at the moment as they haven't gotten any offers. Do you have any insight into patent lawyers, whether or not there's a market for them? I guess this one is biology.
I think that it might just be more about the specific timing of the general economy with regards to offers right now. But if you message me and I'm on the Melviny website, or I don't know if the emails are sent out, but you can find me on the internet, and I'm happy to put you in touch with someone who has done that route, because I think it's very specific route to take your PhD and then join a firm as a patent lawyer or patent examiner and get a JD that way. So it's very specific, but happy to talk to you outside.
And remember, if it's going to take a few years to finish your studies, so if you're starting, by the time you finish, things might look different. So, and you may not get your perfect job right out of law school, and you'll have to do something a little bit different. But I think it's very hard to predict things that a few years from now, I wouldn't be discouraged necessarily.
Yeah, and I would think that intellectual property, particularly patent law, is going to be a growth area just because of the acceleration in technological developments and new patents.
And it's rare to have a science background and a legal background. So those dual degree holders are in great demand.
Okay, and then the second question is, they thank you for taking the time, and it says many court watchers and legal minds are concerned with the attacks on the rule of law. As someone in the midst of applications right now, I'm both worried for our country's future and my professional future. What would you say to a young professional on the verge of such a huge decision in these unprecedented times?
We need lawyers more than ever. I think we need people who know the law, who've studied the law, who read the Constitution, who understand the importance of law. and the value of the rule of law. You know, the law is not in and of itself the thing. It's an alternative to worse things like violence and war. And so to be able to study law and to be part of the solution and to understand it, I think is still a noble profession. So I think studying it for sure is really valuable. And whether you choose to practice it later on is a choice you can make later. And because it's, you know, things are moving so quickly, it's very hard to predict what things will look like. But if you immerse yourself in the law, you'll at least be well informed, so you'll be in a better position to move forward.
Mm-hmm. And as you say, it's, you know, it'll take 3 years to go to
Mhm.
law school. So, and who knows in 3 years what, you know, the world will look like. So,
Well, I'm an optimist. I think the rule of law will continue. I'm not taking it for granted. I think we all have to obviously defend the rule of law and democracy overall. But I'm confident it will survive. And also I think it'd be hard to career plan on the basis that there will be no rule of law. I'm not sure what professions I would recommend. You know, I'm not sure that I would go into being a gangster or something, but it's not a lot of things to look forward to in that scenario.
Yeah.
let's see, next one. Okay. Current administration is challenging legal institution practices in ways that implicate the rule of law and ethics of lawyers and organizations such as law firms, governments, companies, and universities. Could the panelists share their perspective on how the profession is responding and what resources and or training they have found to be useful in maintaining their professional values?
Well, I think each individual lawyer has a professional obligation to uphold the rule of law. We're all officers of the court. We all take an oath. It's part of becoming a member of the profession, and it is a profession, which is important. So that's one of the things that I think, going back to some of the other questions, people like to be part of a profession, which means a career or an occupation where there are rules of what you can and can't do, and it's not just what you can and can't make money at doing. There actually are rules of of ethics and other professional standards. So I think all lawyers are tied to that, and I think are abiding by that. I think by and large, I think the profession has taken steps to to ensure the continuation of the rule of law and against any challenges to it. Could it be more organized? Potentially, yes. But I think I'm not as concerned as I guess some of our viewers.
Any other comments on that? No? Okay. Let's see. Okay, do you think going to law school makes sense for someone interested in pursuing a career in public policy? I think that would be a
Absolutely.
yes.
Yeah. I think it's a tool to really understand, you know, how public policy is formed and to get training there.
And you can make contacts also in law school, right? And with the professors and what they're interested in.
As somebody I worked with who's a pretty senior lawyer, left their job they were in finance. They moved into a crypto company, a very high-profile crypto company, and they recently left their position there to go be an advisor to a very senior senator on issues related to finance and crypto. So that's just one example, and I think they really like their career path and like this next chapter of what they're doing because they know what they're doing and they can help shape the future, which is unshaped right now or less shaped than it will be.
Right,
Especially in crypto.
Practitioners of, you know, like legal practitioners have firsthand experience that they can take with them into the policy role.
Real world experience, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Trish, there was a question about starting a legal career midlife.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
which a lot of people in politics don't have. Well, what I would call real life experience. So
They go to law school and then intern for senators or representatives and go directly into politics, right? Without practicing at all.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, this next one is majored in math and love numerical reasoning and intellectual challenge. How can I celebrate that in a legal career and find my best fit in the profession?
Oh, I have to say I use math all the time as a securities lawyer. Yeah, I've had to call up bankers and say, "Hey, your math isn't mathing." Uh, so you
Oh,
know,
Yoon-jee, yay.
I have to say there is a space for math even in the legal career, and it's funny because people joke I went to law school because I don't do math or bad at numbers, but I'm just like, no, I'm good at math and I use it all the time. And I'm sure Osamu, who is at an investment bank, like can speak to that as well.
Yeah, finance is a great area for you to go in. There's a whole industry of lawyers that support Wall Street, finance both capital markets, M&A, valuation, trading. There's a lot you can do, and there are a lot of lawyers, sadly, who can't add, which is a real handicap being a lawyer and disqualifying in finance. And so if you can write and you're good with numbers, that's a very powerful combination that surprisingly few people have.
And I think even, not as a finance lawyer, even in litigation, I which I did for the first 2 years of my career, I think I had to call upon that to just see if certain things made sense. But Peggy, you mentioned that we missed a question about starting a career
There was a
midlife.
question about whether how it was to start a legal career midlife and whether there's time to pay off loans and things like that. And so I just wanted to address that very quickly.
Oh, okay.
I had classmates who came to law as a second career and they did fantastic. I mean, I think everybody should consider the legal profession it can be a very long period. And people starting who've gone straight through from college, I say, anticipate 50 years, and at some point in those 50 years, you're going to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So there's plenty of room to do different things. So if you go to law school in your 40s and you finish and take the bar, you still have quite a bit of time to pay off loans. And, a lot of schools, if you go into public interest, will also have loan forgiveness programs, and that helps. There's still a lot of room to do a lot of different things. Judges are notoriously on the high end of the age scale. I have colleagues who are in their 90s who are still active judges. And so, if you want to keep practicing for a long time, there's some jobs that have mandatory retirement, but very few of them actually do. So I would say if you're interested, it's never too late. Just go for it.
And I have to say that the classmate that did start as a second career or later in life had a lot of perspective and were definitely more focused students. So successful in that way because they knew what they wanted out of their law degree versus the classmates who went because they didn't know what else to do with their history degree. So
And this is where
I think there's a benefit.
this is where
Sorry.
we have the advantage over the park ranger, who it's hard to be a park ranger at 90, I suspect. That's where you could still be a lawyer or a judge. So
there is one magistrate judge position in Yellowstone Park.
Okay.
Really?
Stand corrected.
Yes, everybody wants that one because
Oh.
because the national parks, anything that happens there is on federal land. So even if there are misdemeanors or car accidents or something that happens there, it goes into federal court because it's on federal land. And so there is one position that is in the middle of that park. So you can be in the outdoors, you can, be
Okay,
a quasi park ranger and
right. A park ranger, go to law school, and then you could be a judge in Yellowstone.
Yeah. So,
Um,
can I talk a moment about math? It's true. Yoon-jee, a lot of lawyers say, I went to law school because I can't do math, and it's just an excuse. You know, it's not math, it's just adding, and being able to calculate things is so important. We do sometimes wage and hour cases where people didn't get paid minimum wage, where they didn't get paid overtime, and you have to multiply the number of hours by how much they were underpaid times the number of weeks, and sometimes they just don't do it right. And so when I have interns, I always say double check their math, and they often find mistakes, and they're shocked. They're like, but they, you know, these are lawyers who filed this in federal court. How did they make a mistake? And it just happens. And so I think having that facility and number one, not being afraid of math, and number two, having that facility of figuring out the logic of it is very useful. So please do go to law school. Please do become a lawyer. We need more of you.
The next question is, what does the future of environmental law look like, given the budget cuts of the current administration? Furthermore, how does one achieve a high salary with environmental law, given the majority of salaries are quite low relative to the profession? Should I consider other avenues in environment and law? That's an interesting question.
I was actually just hearing about how environmental law and environmental lawyers are in high demand because certain resource use lawyers are needed to address all of the resources needed to deal with data centers for AI. So I have to say, I had a friend from Yale who started off at the EPA, got her law degree, and went into big law because she had that EPA background and could use that for deal work in environmental law. So that's also an option.
Right. And in terms of making money, I think a lot of corporations need people with environmental law backgrounds because so much of their work does impact the environment. And to the extent that there are regulations in that space or, you know, however that's climate change, those kinds of things, I think that you could just, the people who are on the government side and nonprofit side probably are paid less, but if you're going to on the corporate side with those same skills, you could make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and this next question I think is for you, Peggy. It says, hello, thank you for your insight. I graduated in 2022 and am now working in nonprofit development. Do you have any advice for someone interested in working at the UN in human rights law? Thank you.
Oh, well, be patient. I think just, you know, there's so few of those jobs. And you're not just competing with American lawyers, you're competing with lawyers from all over the world. And in the current environment, it's also very hard to find positions. When I was at the UN in The Hague, there were 2 ad hoc tribunals that had at that point like 1,000 employees each. And those don't exist anymore. Those are temporary tribunals. The International Criminal Court is there, but it's one court and it's meant to kind of cover everything. And those positions are hard to get. And I'm not sure, sometimes because of the way the United States government is interacting with international organizations, it may impact your ability to get a job in those places. But I don't know that it's going to stay that way forever. So I think stay interested, stay involved, join bar associations because they have committees with international law, public international law, human rights law. Just stay current. And then at some point, you know, when institutions are hiring, you'll be well positioned. So develop some good domestic legal skills. I went into the tribunal with prosecutorial skills, so I could just go right into the courtroom. And so just figure out the skills that are useful for you now and keep an eye out for those opportunities when they come up again. But you do have to be patient because I don't know when that will happen again. I'm fairly certain it will happen. I just don't know when.
Okay, I think the last question, let's see. How much does economic or political shifts affect the day-to-day in some legal practices, such as market? I don't understand though.
I think it's just the market not looking great, you know, like that downturns in the market, economic outlook. As a corporate lawyer in a law firm, I definitely think it does affect client decision making. When I was a litigator, I definitely experienced clients kind of, holding off on litigation and because they didn't want to spend the money at the time because they weren't sure that even if they spent the money to litigate that they'd get a favorable outcome or get any money back from whoever owed them in a contract dispute. As a capital markets lawyer, the market definitely affects how busy we are. And kind of generally busy when the market, like the IPO market's really hot or whatnot, or if there are uncertainties in the US economy, there's often a downturn in deals that are happening, but it comes back eventually. So my day-to-day as a corporate lawyer is definitely affected. But there are so many other, I think, aspects of law that get affected. So we'll pass it on.
Yeah, law is, part of society and the economy. And so when the economy is doing well, certain areas of law are more busy, like M&A and capital markets. And when it's not so well, other areas are more busy, like bankruptcy at a big firm. You have new regulations come about, and people who are in that area are suddenly very busy. You have, huge change in the tax laws with the one big beautiful bill, and that's tax lawyers full employment for planning for the next 12 months at least. So all those things have real impacts on your day-to-day life. You wake up and you read something in the newspaper, and that can really affect what's going to happen in the next 3 to 12 months.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think our hour is up, so I would like to thank you all, Peggy Kuo, Yoon-jee Kim, and Osamu Watanabe, for volunteering for this panel, which I think has been very interesting. This has been recorded, so it will be posted on yalecareerpanels.com, and you can also see our previous panels there too. If you have any suggestions about professions you'd like to see us cover, you can email us at yalecareerpanels@gmail.com. And any other questions or comments, you can also use that email. So thank you all, and thank you to the audience for your questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to them all, but we tried to get to as many as possible. So thank you, and goodbye. We'll see you soon. Take care.